believe me, you are gonna go broke showing turkeys like these.
Now we're talking turkey.
Gobble, gobble, motherfucker.
It's turkey time. Gobble, gobble.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Let's Talk Turkeys. It is spooky season. It is upon us. And so this episode is a long time coming. I'm here today without my co-host, Drive-In Dave. He is off this week. But this episode, it just warrants one person to guest with me and one person only. And they will tell you why they had to be on this episode. I'm excited for this person to be back, so please join in the excitement with me. Nikki Flixx, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
What's your favorite scary movie? Because I can tell you what mine is.
Not that one. So I've been doing franchise episodes. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to this one while you were still a regular on the show. We were kind of putting it off, hoping that we would get more films and then have a bigger catalog to discuss, but it kind of just never happened and kept getting pushed out. And then you left the show. So I feel like this is a good time to be discussing these movies, and we'll get into it. Please tell everyone what we're discussing and why.
Well, I hope you all are ready for this because it's a Scream, baby. We are discussing the Scream franchise. And I have to say, even my least favorite of these 6 films is still on my top 6 favorite horror movies. This is my favorite horror series, and these 6 movies are my favorite horror movies. So I am beyond thrilled that we are finally doing this. We've been talking about it a long time, and then 5 came out, and then 6, and it was wait. And now it's like, you know what? Let's go ahead, and then later on, we'll revisit when there are more films.
Yes, good call. And we'll discuss at the end. That should be not too far off in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So my franchise rankings, as I mentioned, is a deviation from the normal show format. Listeners, in the past, you know that we did the Friday the 13th rankings with Nick's Eclipse from the Cinema Shit Show. I did the Halloween movie franchise rankings with my co-host Drive-In Dave. We had Nick's and Obi-Ben Shinobi from Shit Show back, and we did the Critters franchise rankings. And it seems only fitting to do the Scream franchise because the first one I did on the show was with Blockbuster Brian. We did A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I felt like once you've covered Friday and Nightmare and Halloween, where else do you go with big franchises? Even though I covered Critters with Shit Show, that was their pick and they thought it would be fun. I feel like Scream is the next natural step. It's the next big franchise.
Scream is the franchise that was inspired by the big 3, if you will, the Nightmare and Friday the 13th and Halloween. These movies, the original movie, all of them really, Wes Craven was inspired by the predecessors. So how could you not talk about these movies when you've talked about those others? I mean, they all gave birth to this film, basically.
So we will be discussing each film, not covering it like we do nose to tail with every movie, but we will touch on quite a bit. We're going to give our rankings to see where we fall. And then we'll do a nice little wrap up at the end with some tidbits of what's to come. So let's jump in. Our first film is Scream, the OG from 1996, written by Kevin Williamson, directed by Wes Craven.
Hello?
Hello.
Who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Someone is playing a deadly game.
It all began with a scream over 911.
Someone who's seen one too many scary movies. Now, he's taken his love of fear
Hello?
Hello, Sydney.
one step too far.
Do you like scary movies?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a scary movie. Number 1, you can never have sex. Never, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back.
He didn't make the rules.
The police are always on track. If they watch prom night, they save time.
He just kills by them. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door. Don't try to hide.
Everybody's a suspect!
You're not scared, are you?
Scream.
Clocks in at an hour 51, which normally I would say is way too long for a horror movie. The Scream movies, most of them, I do not mind that they're about 2 hours long because they're such fun watches.
Yeah, and I would say that on every single one in the series, pacing is not an issue. They flow really well. Each one, there isn't a point where you're like, okay, get on with it. In my opinion, rewatching each of these movies on its own, none of them really have that lull. So I don't mind the runtime on any of them.
So for this one, Kevin Williamson was a little bit of a big deal. He had done I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Faculty, Teaching Mrs. Tingle, which originally was Killing Mrs. Tingle, but they switched that title because of school violence and stuff, which I appreciated. So he was kind of a big deal in the horror world. And Wes Craven directing, I mean, I feel like, especially now, several movies in, it doesn't get much better. They are a great team.
Oh, yeah. The two of them together was perfection.
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, I'm sure you're all familiar with Scream if you're listening to this, but the IMDb plot for Scream, I saw you roll your eyes. Don't you hate these? I hate these.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get your hot take after I read it. A year after the murder of her mother, a teenage girl is terrorized by a masked killer who targets her and her friends by using scary movies as a part of a deadly game.
Okay. I feel like throwing in that it's a year after the death of her mother is a bit of a boner killer. I mean, it's a little too much foreshadowing, but whatever.
So they had a budget of around 14 to 15 million, did a box office of 173. So they fast tracked that sequel.
Yep. I was probably a good portion of that box office, let me tell you. I went and saw this, I think, 3 or 4 times in the theater.
Wow. So I did see it once for sure when it came out. From the trailers and everything, it seemed like it was going to be refreshing, a new take in horror, and it absolutely was.
So for each of the films, I gave it like what should be the tagline under the name of the film, in my opinion. So for this one, it's Scream, the rebirth of horror films, aka Wes Craven's masterpiece. There you go. This movie was advertised as a possible rebirth of the genre, and that's exactly what it was.
So this section is going to be trivia and tidbits and fun little things. So this is just random stuff. Let's just talk about random stuff. It was originally titled Scary Movie, which a lot of people know. That ended up being the name of the parody franchise of these movies. Did you know that there was a bidding war on the script when he first put it out there? Everybody in Hollywood wanted it, and it sold over a weekend. It sold that fast.
Not surprising at all. I'm sure the script was obviously this is going to be a massive, massive hit.
Yep. So Sydney lives on Elm Street.
Love it.
I didn't realize that until I did all the trivia first and then did my rewatch. When she's typing on the computer for help, calling 911, her address appears on there that she lives on Elm Street. Did you ever catch that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've seen this movie so many times. More than any movie I've ever rewatched in my life. I've seen the first Scream probably over 100 times, not exaggerating. I rewatch it multiple times a year, every year since it came out.
Okay. Well, mega fan.
Oh, yeah. I guarantee you I know all the trivia and then some.
Okay, so this was the first big horror film to do a take on meta. Obviously, it's been done to death since, but the Scream movies do it the best, I would argue.
Agreed.
Drew Barrymore, and the phone calls between her and the killer, and the calls between Sydney and the killer, played by Roger L. Jackson, doing the Scream voice in all the movies, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe he's the classic Ghostface voice in every movie.
So they kept him in the first movie. This is trivia that I found. They kept him out of sight, way far away, so that Drew and Nev never saw him and interacted. So the phone calls would be extra scary. Yeah,
yeah, and it was a real phone call, real working phones, and he would really call in, and they would really pick up and have to deal with him. Yep.
Yeah, fucking love that when I read that. I was like, no wonder. So I also have here the MPAA censored her boyfriend Steve's guts in the beginning. They were giving it an NC-17. Also, Rose McGowan's head in the garage door is supposed to be much more gory and graphic, and they made them chop it up. And then the last bit of that with the MPAA, they tried to take out even Drew getting stabbed when she's running, which I didn't realize. And Wes told a little white lie and told them, well, we only did the one take, so I can't really reshoot it. She's not available for reshoots. So
yes,
they got to leave it in.
Also, I've watched the movie with director commentary more times than I can count because I love hearing Wes Craven talk about it. So another thing that the MPAA got them on was that zooming shot up to Drew Barrymore's body.
Ooh.
They said that's too graphic, the intestines hanging out, all that. And so he said, well, is the problem how long it is? They said, yeah, it's too much time seeing all of those entrails. He said, fine. And he cut out every other frame, which is why it looks like this weird choppy effect as you're zooming up to her body, but it makes it more ominous. And he still got away with leaving the entrails in.
So this is the one time I'm going to say thank you to the MPAA.
Yeah, because that shot's brilliant.
Isn't that a fucking cool ass shot? I love that shot.
Yeah. And it's just a tribute to, you can attribute that to how smart Wes Craven was. He went, oh, the problem is 20 seconds of entrails is too much. How about 10? They said, fine. So that's what he did. He so smart. You still see it all.
And then the last thing I had for this section is the after Drew gets attacked, the parents are saying, the dad tells the mom, drive down to the Mackenzies and get help. And that is a nod to Halloween. And so then later in Halloween H2O, they say, go down to the Beckers for help as an homage back to Scream. I absolutely love that. And you know what? I'm not even lying. The first time that I saw this, I picked that up. Being a huge horror head. Yeah, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Me too. And it was like, oh, nice little nod to Halloween, which is clearly one of the huge inspirations for Scream.
Yes. Do you have anything for trivia and random tidbits?
Not really. You touched on a lot of it. The whole thing with Drew Barrymore's body hanging there was my one note about the MPAA shit.
Okay. So let's jump then into the category what works. Let's talk about what works in this film.
Okay. So in my opinion, in the original Scream movie, almost all of it works. That's that. The suspense, the actors, the dialogue, the red herrings, the irreverence, the meta, that being introduced to the horror genre, which really hadn't been there much before. The references and homages to other movies. Nothing will ever beat, in my opinion, the not knowing and the unpredictability of this first Scream movie. The rest follow a formula and then sometimes take a left turn or flip it on its head. But with this movie, going into it on a first viewing, the not knowing and unpredictability is what worked the most, because you were like, this is not like anything I've seen before. And therefore, it's not predictable. That is my favorite thing about this movie.
So for me, I have Marco Beltrami's score.
Oh, yeah, it's excellent.
So good. And then the cast, as you said. I like Randy's rules. I like the introduction of, this is a horror nerd. He knows his genre inside and out, because how many of us could relate to that?
That's why she always outsmarted the killer in the big chase scene at the end. Only virgins can do that. Don't you know the rules? What rules? You don't... Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. Big no-no! Even in popular, sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. No, the sin factor. It's a sin. It's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
You see, you push the laws and you end up dead.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. It's very clear that this movie is being made with a huge wink, wink, nod, nod to horror fans. And that's another one of my favorite things about it. that works so well is you're like, oh, thank you so much, Wes Craven, Kevin Williamson. Thank you for seeing us.
Yes.
Thank you for seeing all us horror fanatics.
And then the opening scene with a major quote unquote star being killed off. That had not been done to such a degree. And it was so shocking. And again, everybody has tried to rip that off, but you can't duplicate the magic of that, I don't think.
Especially when it was the first time.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you had, and it is a bit of an homage. You had Janet Leigh in Psycho, not expecting this major star who was advertised as the star of the film to get butchered. But to have it happen so quickly was something we had never seen before. And again, it's that element of shock that you get with this first movie. And really, I think you can only go back to your first time seeing this movie to really recapture that feeling. It was beyond genius. And the way that happened was sort of an accident because Drew Barrymore originally was going to play Sydney. And then for whatever reasons, she didn't want to commit to that period of time and said, actually, I think it would be super fun to play Casey. And they were like, wait, what? Drew Barrymore wants to be killed in the first 10 minutes of the movie? And that stroke of genius was, oh man, that's gonna freak everybody out. That's gonna flip everything around. Like it wasn't even intentional at first.
Right. I feel like a lot of it's lightning in a bottle, this movie.
Oh, for sure. And I think another thing that works so well, Stu and Randy are perfect examples of how to write and cast secondary characters in any genre of film. Those two in particular, absolutely everything about them is spot on perfect. The way they're written, the way they were cast, the way that the actors played the roles, it's a masterclass in what do you do to make secondary characters interesting and compelling. You cast people like this and you give them dialogue like that. It's just, it's fucking genius. I don't know how else to describe it.
Coming to my fiesta?
Yeah, I'm off early. Curfew, you know?
What's that werewolf movie with E.T.'s mom in it?
The Howling, horror, straight ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, now that's in poor taste.
What?
If you were the only suspect in a senseless bloodbath, would you be standing in the horror section?
It was just a misunderstanding. He didn't do anything.
You're such a little lapdog. He's got killer printed all over his forehead.
Okay. Really? Why'd the cops let him go, smart guy?
Because obviously they don't watch enough movies. This is standard horror movie stuff. Prom night revisited, man.
Why would he want to kill his own girlfriend?
There's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend. That's the beauty of it all. Simplicity. If it gets too complicated, you lose your target audience.
What's his reason?
Maybe Sydney wouldn't have sex with him.
What, she's saving herself for you?
Maybe. Now that Billy tried to mutilate her, do you think Sid would go out with me?
No, I don't at all. No.
And I will say that this is a movie where when you see it for the first time, you want to go in with no spoilers and it'll blow your socks off. But it holds up on a rewatch. Even though you know what's coming, it is still a kick in the pants to watch this movie over and over.
Absolutely. There are so many elements about it that are just so highly entertaining. Even if you know the plot, it doesn't matter because you're going to notice how brilliant the camera angles are, or how well done the sound is, the sound of the knife, how great the music is. You know, you're going to notice all these little things or appreciate the performances in a different way. It's so rewatchable. I like I said, I'm not exaggerating. I watch this movie 2 to 3 times a year.
So then I guess you're going to say nothing when I ask you about our next category. What doesn't work?
My only complaint with this first movie is Neve Campbell. Shame on her acting coach for letting her think that touching her neck and her face and her hair a lot would show that she's got anxiety. It gets to be so obnoxious and so distracting. She's overacting, she's melodramatic, but think about where she was coming from as an actress. She was very young. She was a little green when it came to film, and she was used to being on, you know, a soapy, schlocky TV series. So she does improve toward the end of the movie. It gets less distracting. And then later in the series, I mean, she's not even the same actress. She's leaps and bounds better. So I can write it off to being a little young and a little green. But that's really my only complaint is she's a bit distracting during the first 3/4 of the movie.
So she was on, what was it, Party of Five?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's, soapy and it's over dramatic. And
for sure.
so I get that that's where she came from. And I just adore her. And I think she's grown a lot as an actress. So all love to Neve Campbell. I would never, ever insult her as an actress. But in this first movie, it's a little over the top and it's a little distracting.
Well, trauma. She had to deal with the trauma of it all. So
oh yeah,
a little bit melodramatic for that. So my only critique, I have one item for what doesn't work, and it's Tatum's death. I don't care for, I know why they pivoted because like you, I listened to the commentary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan. She's got a gorgeous figure, but her tits are too big to crawl through that doggy door. I'm sorry. No, no, no.
Fully agreed. It's silly. And the way the character is written and portrayed by the amazing Rose McGowan, you just you don't think she'd do that. You don't think anybody in their right mind would do that, even if you're panicking. It doesn't quite work, but it's the shock factor.
Yeah. 100%. And that leads me right into, we're going to go out of order here. Let's jump to least favorite character because mine is Tatum. I don't like the way she's written. I don't like how she is apparently only there to support Sydney's storyline. We don't really get to see her as her own fleshed out character. And she's Dewey's sister. She's Sydney's bestie. She's a little bit of a mouthpiece here and there when they need her. And that's it. I feel like she's the weakest written character in the film.
Fully agreed. Yeah, she's my least favorite character in this movie. I do have to say it would be way worse if it weren't an actress like Rose McGowan. She's just so compelling and likable, and I love how smart she is and the way that she delivers those lines when she's obviously only supporting and fleshing Sydney's character out. She's just fantastic. So I kind of just gloss over it, but yeah, agreed. And it was still only 1996, so we weren't quite to the era of, hey, you know what? Females are fully fledged people and let's make them as rounded out and interesting as every male character. So it's, to me, that one you can kind of chalk up to it was still the 90s.
Yeah. Well, who's your favorite character in this film?
It has to be Gale. Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers is my favorite character in this movie, and she's my favorite of the entire franchise. Super close number 2 favorite is Stu, for sure, because when you think about the fact that Matthew Lillard only appears in this movie, and there are now 6 of them, but he is still probably the most beloved character in the franchise. He's certainly the most beloved killer in the franchise. That speaks so much to how amazing Matthew Lillard's performance in this movie is. But yeah, Gale is my favorite character because she is smart and she's a little cunning and a little devious and a little out for herself, but she has those moments of redemption. I love her chemistry with everybody. I maybe it's just a Courtney Cox thing that she's that damn good at playing off the other actors. I don't know. She's such an unlikable character, but you just like her anyway and you root for her. And I adore Courtney Cox. I think that she's such an underrated actress, period, end of sentence. In this movie and in the franchise, Gale is the character I consistently come back for.
Okay, fair enough. Stu is my close second as well.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite in this first film is Dewey because he has his own theme music. He's got the boyish charm.
And he knows it.
Yes, Arquette quirkiness that only he can deliver.
Yeah.
He's my favorite in this movie. Every time he's on screen, if I'm like also watching my phone or whatever, I will stop whatever I'm doing to watch Dewey scenes.
Definitely. And I would have to say, yeah, with this movie, Gale is my number 1, Stu is my number 2. With the entire franchise, Gale is number 1 and Dewey is number 2.
Okay.
I adore him, and I adore him in every one of these movies that he appears in. Just like Neve Campbell, watching these movies, you can see his progression as an actor, how he improves from the first one to his last appearance in the series. And I love that for him. I love his chemistry with Courtney Cox. They're beautiful together every step of the way, even post their real life divorce. They work so well together. How could you not love and root for Dewey? So certainly as favorite character, he's my honorable mention throughout the entire series.
Hi, Gale Weathers, field correspondent, top story.
I know who you are, Miss Weathers.
Is there a problem on campus?
No, everything's under control.
Well, of course, you're here. You look awfully young to be a police officer.
I'm 25 years old.
You know, in a demographic study, I proved to be most popular amongst males 11 to 24. I guess I just missed you. Of course, you don't look a day over 12, except in that upper torso area. Does the force require you to work out?
No, ma'am. Because of my boyish good looks, muscle mass has increased my acceptance as a serious police officer. If you'll excuse me.
I'm sorry, am I keeping you?
If I may say so, Miss Weathers, you are much prettier in person.
So you do watch the show?
I'm 25. I was 24 for a whole year.
Do you have a favorite line in this movie, just out of curiosity?
It has to be when Randy lays out the rules in the living room and tells everybody, you know, never say I'll be right back. When Stu says, "Hey, I'm getting another beer. I'll be right back." That has become iconic. And it's iconic not just among horror fans, it's iconic, period. And anytime you're anywhere with a group of people and somebody says, "I'll be right back," there's always that one or two people who point and go, "Oh shit." I love that. And him just basically throwing a middle finger to Randy and his rules.
Yeah.
I love what an ominous sign that is on a rewatch of him being like, "Fuck the rules. I don't have to worry about it. I'm the killer, baby." Like almost anything that comes out of Stu's mouth in the last 20 minutes of the movie, I would have to say, aside from the "I'll be right back," it has to be one of the things that just came out of Matthew Lillard's head and wasn't in the script, which is, "My mom's gonna be so mad at me."
Yes.
How could you not? And so my daughter was just at a comic book / movie convention and met Matthew Lillard, and she said that she could hear one person, the next person, at least 10 people in front of her, all went in there and walked up to him and said, "My mom's gonna be so mad at me." That's like the most iconic line.
Yeah.
And it's something that he just said off the cuff. It was ad-libbed. So that's my favorite line. That and "I'll be right back."
What did she say to him when she met him? Because we only get 2 seconds when you take a photo with somebody.
Oh, she just walked up to him like shaking and said, "I can't believe I'm meeting you." And he went, "Oh my God, right? It's crazy." And he started jumping up and down with his hands over his mouth. Yeah.
I love him.
Just absolutely, he was everything you would want him to be. But the whole, with him sitting there in the kitchen and he picks up the phone and crosses his leg and just says, "Hello." That's a Matthew Lillard thing, not in the script. And him saying that his mom's gonna be pissed at him, like that stuff that just came out of his mouth, that him and Billy interacting with each other when they're stabbing each other, like all of that, it's so quotable. It's so great.
So it's no shocker that my favorite line, and this actually is a Stu line, it's when they're all sitting at the fountain and they're ribbing each other, and he goes, "You better live her alone." Get it? Liver. So funny.
Yep.
So what's your favorite scene in this movie? Like, what scene do you get hyped for?
It's the entire opening sequence from the minute the movie opens until poor Drew's body is hanging in that tree. That entire, I don't know how long it is, maybe 10 minutes. It's my favorite scene in the movie. It's my favorite kill in the movie is Casey. Tatum's death is a close second. I know it's not practical, but the way they shot it just looks fucking cool to me. The shock of that opening sequence, though, God, I love it. I could watch that one scene on repeat for the rest of my life and I wouldn't get bored.
So my favorite scene is Stu's party, and interchangeable with the Gale outside of the van, that whole section in the third act. I love that. It's so fast paced, and it just cooks. It just moves. And my favorite kill in the movie is Stu actually getting with the TV smash. I think that's the final thing that takes him out, right? Is the TV on the head?
Supposedly, allegedly, yes.
Okay, well we'll get to that. So I like that. I think that's a lot of fun. Anything else on Scream before we move on?
I think we kind of touched on everything in my notes. My notes are set up. Thank you for that, by the way. They're set up to kind of perfectly flow with everything that you're wanting to bring up. So,
all right. So on to Scream 2, which I mentioned was fast-tracked, came out in 1997, clocks in at 2 brisk hours, written by Kevin Williamson, directed by Wes Craven.
2 Windsor College students were murdered last night during a sneak preview of the new movie Stab.
It's starting again, Randy.
This has nothing to do with us.
Randy, a guy in a ghost mask hacked up 2 people in a movie theater telling our life story.
Hi, Gail Weathers, author of the Woodsboro murders. Do you think the killer will strike again?
We have no evidence that this is a serial killer. It's a classic case of life imitating art, imitating life.
Are you suggesting that someone's trying to make a real-life sequel?
Do you think someone's trying to duplicate Woodsboro?
It looks like it.
Think you have a copycat on your hands?
Thanks, Chief.
Hello?
Hello, Sydney. Remember me?
What do you want?
I want you. It's showtime.
Police are everywhere.
There's some freaked out psycho trying to follow in Billy Loomis's footsteps. You probably already know.
The way I see it, someone's out to make a scene. So it's our job to observe the rules of the scene.
Just want to sit here and wait and see who drops next?
I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
No shocker here that they made another one, because through a budget, Adam, of 24 million, box office of 172, people were loving the Scream series.
I camped out to get tickets to see this on opening night.
I was the good old days.
That excited. And so my tagline for Scream 2, a nearly flawless sequel and the best horror sequel of all time. Period.
Ooh, that's a big statement to make.
I am making it. I got a big mouth. I'm making a bold statement. Come at me in the comments.
The IMDb plot for Scream 2, in case anybody is unfamiliar. 2 years after the first series of murders, as Sydney acclimates to college life, someone donning the ghost face costume begins a new string of killings.
I am mad at it. It's correct. It's not spoilery. I'm not mad.
Yeah, I really don't care for spoilery synopsis, because a lot of people will go to like IMDb or something to get an idea if they maybe, do I want to watch this? And when it gives it all away, you're like, well, never mind.
That's why I don't watch trailers.
So let's jump into some trivia and tidbits about Scream 2. One thing I found by watching, I did watch the commentary, because I went through all the Scream movies pretty quick, like in a week. And then I went back and watched the commentary on 1 and 2 and part of 3. And I noticed on the commentary on Scream 2, Wes mentioned his choice in his use of color in this film. And I thought that was wildly fascinating, because I didn't really pick up on it. I kind of did. But once he said it, and I watched it, I went, oh, it makes complete sense how they put Sydney in the dark colors all the time. And like the sorority girls are in pastels, how the killer always has the black boot, so you can't really tell, you know, with the red herring, who's who. Very, very smart stuff, I think he did with that.
Definitely. This movie does a fantastic job of giving you vibes, letting you know where a character is at by what they're wearing or how they're lit. The music, like it's very vibey. And I like that. It's a change from the first movie. They're using sound and color and all of those things to convey things about the characters and where they're at.
So there was a little bit of a leak, a 30-page leak of the script onto the internet in the early days of everybody sleuthing and spoiling things. And that actually changed how security with scripts would be dealt with going forward from that point on for everybody in the business. Apparently, Derek and Hallie, the boyfriend and the girlfriend, were lovers on the sly, and they were going to be the killers and setting up Sydney. I'm very, very glad that the first 30 pages of that script leaked, because I do not like that at all.
Fully agreed. It would have been too obvious when we get to the film in question later on. Obviously, that plot was revisited later, of those two being the killers. But yeah, I think what they ended up with was smarter and better.
So I felt like, unfortunately, Mickey, the freaky Tarantino film student, being one of the killers, felt shoehorned in. And I never could put my finger on why it felt a little disjointed and weird. And after learning about who the original killers were and that they had to switch it on the fly, it makes sense to me now why, when I watch this, Mickey feels shoehorned in.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And just like with Tatum being a bit of an irritating character, not that she's irritating, but the way she's presented and written, the character of Mickey is really irritating. And if it weren't for the quality of the actor, it would be much more of a sore spot for the movie, I think. But because you've got Timothy Olyphant, who has gone on to do incredible things and has always been one of my favorite actors, because you have him giving such a good performance, I give it a little bit of a pass.
Well, yeah, you kind of have to if you're enjoying these films and rolling with them. You got to just kind of roll with it. And Oliphant is wonderful with what he's given to work with.
Oh, for sure.
I did like on the commentary, Wes and I think it's Mary somebody were one of the producers. They were saying that their favorite line was the line that Portia says, one of the sorority girls. I want to keep calling her fraternity girl. When she walks up to Sydney and she's like, "Hi." No, I really mean that. Hi. That the lady was saying, Mary was saying to Wes, yeah, to this day, we still say that, like out in life. I thought that was hysterical that Wes would say that just because it was the line that stuck with him.
Well, it's funny. It's fucking funny. I love that they kept in this movie, which you would expect a sequel to, maybe the bar is lowered, like it doesn't meet the bar of the first one. I love that they kept the mixture of intensity and horror and drama and comedy. They kept the level of the laughs right where the first one was, in my opinion, which is what makes this a nearly flawless sequel, because it matches the level of the first one.
Which reminds me, we're ranking these, and I forgot to ask you about the first one, but that's okay. Scream 1, how does that rank for you among all the Scream movies? 1 to 6, where does that fall?
Yeah, it's number one. It's in first place. It always will be. It set the standard for everything that came after, not just in the series, but in horror, period. Anything that came after 1996 was going to the standard of the original, and nothing will ever quite touch it. That's how I feel. It's my favorite of these movies.
And then for 2, Scream 2, you rank that at?
Number 2.
2, okay.
A very close second. I almost love this movie as much as the first.
That's why I ranked mine 1 and 2 kind of a tie. I kind of put them like with Jaws 1 and 2. Like they just kind of go together as a viewing. I don't really have a favorite over the other. They're kind of neck and neck. And then the last little tidbit I had here was the play that Sydney is doing in college, playing Cassandra in the Greek tragedy, and the parallels between her constant struggle to accepting her fate, trust and betrayal with the people around her. Would I be safer if I'm alone? All the parallels between that. I think that was really fun to add that element in there.
Agreed. I love the use of Sydney studying to be an actor and the play that she's in, this Greek tragedy. It works so well. It's really fun visually, the way that they play with how it looks and the costumes, the camera angles, the music, the dialogue of the play, and the parallels that she's working through her PTSD. It's treated very sensitively. It's very smart. That in the end, she has to pay for her mother's sins or someone else's sins. Like, I love that. And it's what gives this movie a depth and darkness that didn't exist in the first one, which is why I say it's almost a tie. Almost. The only reason it isn't is because the first one was the first. And I will never forget the feeling of experiencing it for the first time and how it completely changed horror. This one has that darkness and depth. And I love that. If you're going to make a sequel, dig deeper. And they did.
So are you familiar with the Selma Blair of it all?
How do you mean?
So apparently she screen tested for Sydney in Scream. She screen tested the bathroom scene, and they obviously didn't go with her. So they brought her back to be the voice on the phone with Cece. Which I'm guessing is because it's Sarah Michelle Gellar and she knew her from Cruel Intentions or something to that effect.
That makes perfect sense. I would think that maybe Sarah Michelle Gellar was also in the mix during the casting of the first movie, and that's why she's here in this one too. Or maybe she just was a fan and wanted to jump in. But it makes sense that every young actor and actress at the time wanted in at this point. I love that. And I love Selma Blair, and I follow her very closely on social media, so I can confirm that she and Sarah Michelle Gellar are obviously practically lifelong buddies. They're still very good friends. So
I love that.
Yeah, that tracks. And I love that it was her on the phone. I do remember knowing that, but you reminded me because I forgot.
Yeah. So David Arquette's father in real life, Louis, is the police chief. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
I love that when family is in a movie together like that. And then last thing, Matthew Lillard pops up in this movie. Can we discuss for a moment the fan theories and what actually was the case?
Go for it. Explain to the listeners.
So Matthew Lillard, sporting a white shirt, some sunglasses, and bleach blonde hair, shows up at the fraternity party or sorority party, whichever. And there was wild speculation still to this day that it was Stu. Stu's not dead. That is not the case. It was because he was dating Neve Campbell at the time and was visiting her and just wanted to be in the scene that day. That's all there is to it, point blank.
They
Sorry,
probably
fans.
thought he looked so different, and wouldn't it be funny for the hardcore fans to maybe be able to pause their DVD and spot him?
But yeah, it doesn't mean Stu's alive, everybody. Sorry about it.
Wah wah.
So moving on to what works in this film. What works for you?
Almost the same note here as with the first movie. What doesn't work is a much shorter paragraph. In fact, it's like 2 sentences. What works? The plot, the returning characters, the dialogue, the continuing of pushing the boundaries of horror and use of sequel and horror sequel tropes. One of my favorite things is Tori Spelling playing Sydney in Stab. That was a stroke of fucking genius. And thank you so much, Tori Spelling, for agreeing to do that after they flippantly threw her name out as a joke in the first movie, to then come back. And if it was the filmmaker's idea to go, what if we really did? And for her to not be insulted by that in the first movie and to come in and go, hell yeah, I'll play Sydney and Stab. I fucking love that. It's such a laugh out loud moment when you're seeing this movie for the first time. And if you just watch the first one and then you go into this one, the best part of this movie, though, in my opinion, is the use of Cotton Weary as a bigger character and as a perfect red herring. And he's incredible. I'm so glad that after only having little tidbits of his face in the first movie, they realized what a gem they had in Liev Schreiber as an actor and expanded the character and brought him in, because it works so well. His performance in this movie is so good, and I love that they brought that in because it's yet another in-your-face reminder of Sydney's past traumas. He is just a walking representation of the trauma of her mother in that situation. Yeah. So I love that. What else works? Let's see. Jada and Omar dying in that opening sequence.
Yep, that's on my list of what works as well.
You're getting a twofer instead of just one. I mean, you don't see that coming. You don't see that coming.
She sells the shit out of her scene.
Absolutely.
Her face, the shock that she can't believe it's happening, and then she's up there, nobody's fucking helping her.
Yep.
It's insane.
We'll dive into it more when we discuss our favorite scene / kill.
Okay.
So what else works?
I like how Sydney's constantly growing.
Yes.
Like you said.
Her character development and the development, I love her, of Neve Campbell as an actress. You can see it. It's all over the place. They gave her such better material, and she was much better at working with it in this movie. Her performance is so good. She's so compelling, and you feel so much for her. Let's see what else works here. The obvious killer, Mickey, and then the one you don't see coming. That dichotomy, I love it. The death of Sarah Michelle Gellar / Cece. Flipping fantastic, because this is another well-known actress and it's mid-movie and she bites it a la Drew Barrymore. You just don't see it coming. You don't think they're going to do it again. This is the third one now.
And she did her own stunt. She's the one that fell off the balcony. And
hell
because
yeah.
she wanted to, because she was doing stunts on Buffy and she convinced them to let her do it.
I was going to say, hell yeah. Buffy doesn't suffer any fools. She doesn't need a stunt double. She's got it. I mean, the whole sequence is so well done, and Sarah Michelle Gellar is so fantastic. Tension in that sequence is so good. When Mickey tries to argue in film class that Empire is a great example of a superior sequel, and Randy says it doesn't count because it's part of a trilogy. The foreshadowing of that, it works. It's so good. It's just that there's so much in this movie that works. It's hard to find things that don't.
Oh, but I was able to.
Oh, me too. Me too, for sure. And like I said, I do have my complaints about all of these movies.
Yeah. So the last thing I had for what works was the multitude of red herrings in this installment. I feel like this was the biggest bunch of red herrings in any of the films singled out. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy the what the fuck is going on aspect of it. You just don't know.
The back and forth. At one point, they make the sorority sisters appear suspicious. Jerry O'Connell, we haven't talked about him, as Derek, who is the #1 most obvious suspect. He rides that line pitch perfectly. back and forth, being suspicious of him, being sympathetic with him, just like how Sydney's feeling about him. We feel that way about him. And it's another beautiful piece of casting. That just the casting in this movie is so fucking good. I can't say enough about every actor they brought in. It was just fantastic choice for each character.
So a nod to the casting is going to walk us right into the next category, what doesn't work. I absolutely love that they cast for Billy Loomis's mother, aka Debbie Salt, a basically sitcom actress at that point. She wasn't known for leading feature films or anything of that sort. So Laurie Metcalf, but it doesn't work for me in the sense that not her performance, the character, because nobody recognizes her. And I guess nobody should until she comes face to face with Sydney at the end. And then Sydney's like, Mrs. Loomis? Like she barely recognizes her because apparently she had a lot of work done and lost a lot of weight. That doesn't work for me. It just doesn't.
So number one on my list of things I don't like and I think doesn't work here is the reveal of Mrs. Loomis. So we are in agreement. It's a little too easy to say this character we've been seeing the entire movie is actually someone from the past and we've just never seen her before. That feels a little too schlocky and a little too cheap and convenient. But if you think about understanding that they had to change their ideas about who was the killer on a dime, I see how they maybe scrambled and went, well, shit, what else can we do? And it's a brilliant thing that they did, deciding, hey, it's Billy's mother. But I think the having her in the movie and being seen the entire time and no one recognizing her, just, it seems a little unrealistic.
I literally would not have been mad. I would have been totally fine if they had pulled a Mrs. Voorhees, where you see her once or twice for 2 seconds, and then all of a sudden she's the killer at the end, and Sydney goes, oh my God, it's you. Not this whole, oh, I had some work done and she's been in the whole movie like they do. I would have preferred the Mrs. Voorhees approach.
Fully agreed. I feel like that's one of the only flaws in this movie. One of my other complaints is the sorority sisters. They're a little too out there and it's a little bit grating.
But Rebecca Gay Hart.
I know, and they're dolls, and Portia de Rossi, like they're fantastic, but they're a little too annoying, a little too stereotypical, a little too grating. But then they use them as red herrings, which is like, I kind of give the grading part a pass because it's kind of cool that they flip and suddenly it's like, wait a minute, are they actually really sinister? I'm not sure what's going on here. My other huge complaint is the big push for diversity. Bringing in, realizing like, you know what, all these horror movies and even the first film, we got a whitewashed cast here, so let's change things up. So you bring in the character of Hallie, okay, but then you also have Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett in the opening. It feels like it's a little too forced.
I give it a pass because of Jada. She is giving me Peaches from Shame Attitude. And I eat it up with a spoon. I can't help it.
I know. And
I can't help it.
Yeah, it's not any kind of discredit to the actors. Yeah. I just feel like you went from having no people of color to now you have this many. Yes. It feels like trying to serve it to us, you know, like it just feels a little condescending, I guess.
So speaking of condescending, I know you hate it when I point this stuff out, but that's just because that's what I do. What doesn't work for me is Nev's haircut in this movie. I feel like it's not doing her any favors. Girlfriend needs a different do. I just think so. And then also Omar's death. I don't like the approach they took of how the weapon gets him, how it goes. I mean, we've all been in a public bathroom. You know that knife doesn't go through that wall.
Yes. Yes.
Why would you do that to us?
Yes.
We know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It doesn't work. Physically, it would not work and it doesn't work. But the effect of it is cool. It's a cool idea in theory. If that divider between the stalls was made of styrofoam, absolutely. But since it isn't.
Oh, and it was a retractable knife that they used. They said this in the commentary, and poor Omar went for it, and he actually did get a little bit poked in the ear on accident because he just was all in on his performance.
Of course he was, which is why I love that scene, regardless of how silly it is, the knife going through the wall.
Okay, so let's move on to, this wasn't an official thing I asked you for, but do you have a favorite line in this movie by chance? Something that stands out to you?
Oh, yeah. When the killer asks Randy what his favorite scary movie is, and his response, Showgirls. Oh God,
Yes.
I love Randy so much, and I love I love the response there.
So I don't have a favorite line per se, but my favorite thing is when Jerry O'Connell gets up on the tables in the cafeteria and sings "I Think I Love You" from Top Gun. I guess he's taken that from inspiration.
The idea to serenade her publicly and embarrassingly,
Yeah.
sure. I mean,
I love
obviously
that.
it's the Partridge Family. It's what was it? David Cassidy, I think,
Yes.
sang that song. Yeah, it's cute, it's sweet.
I
It does,
love it.
to me, that little sequence kind of feels out of place in the movie as far as the tone. So it's actually on my list. It's the last thing on my list of complaints is that moment seems like it's trying a little too hard to make me change my mind about Derek. And it doesn't quite fit in the movie, pacing, tone wise. Yeah. But I am totally splitting hairs here because I don't have many complaints about this movie. I just love it.
What's your favorite scene?
Ooh, it's a tie.
Okay.
It's a tie. So the entire opening sequence, yet again, just like with the first, up until Jada drops dead, that whole sequence, I'm edge of my seat, the tension, the performances, the way that the Stab movie is playing and the crowd is running around in ghost face masks with the knives. And you're like, oh my God, what has been created by Billy and Stu?
With Heather Graham as the Drew Barrymore character instead.
I love it. And how she says, she's saying things that Casey said, but not quite. The lines are a little different. And why is she in the shower? And it's like, they're yet again poking fun at horror movies. And now it's a horror movie within a horror movie based on the previous horror movie, which is a true story in this world. Like, I love how it just keeps getting more and more layers of how meta it is. So yeah, and then the death in a crowded place, and then Jada's performance, the way that she sells the shit, like you said, out of her attack and her death, and the way that she looks at everyone when she's standing up in front of the screen, like, how could you all be running around with your knives and your masks celebrating this and watch me die? Like, you just immediately get all these feels like, oh my God, this is so hard to watch right now. I love it. It's so off-putting, and it's such a strong start, which you were hoping for, but weren't necessarily expecting in a sequel to a movie like Scream, and you get it right away. So that's my favorite scene, but it's a close tie between that and the scene where Hallie and Sydney have to escape the backseat of that cop car when Ghostface is passed out in the driver's seat.
That's my favorite scene.
The tension.
Yes.
The tension, and they sell it so well, and the way it's shot is so good. It's so scary and intense. I freaking love it. And then honorable mention, because there's so many scenes I love, is Randy and Dewey discussing the rules of a sequel and the possible suspects.
Yes.
I mean, come on. The two of them are riffing off each other and well, you're a suspect then. Well, so are you. Okay. Moving on. Just I love that so much. There's so many things I love in this movie. It's hard to pick, but yeah, if I had to pick, that would be my top 3.
Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate. More blood, more gore. Carnage, candy. Your core audience just expects it. And number 3, if you want your sequel to become a franchise, never, ever...
How do we find the killer, Randy? That's what I want to know.
Oh, let's look at the suspects. There's Derek, the obvious boyfriend. Hello, Billy Loomis. The guy's pre-med in his pity. Me surface wound conveniently missed every major vein and artery.
So you think it's Derek?
Not so fast. Let's assume the killer, or Urs, has a half a brain. He's not a Nick at Night rerun type of guy. He wants to break some new ground, right? So forget the boyfriend. It's tired. Who else do we got?
There's
Mickey, the freaky Tarantino film student. But if he's a suspect, so am I. So let's move on.
Well, let's not move on. Maybe you are a suspect.
Well, if I'm a suspect, you're a suspect.
You have a point. Okay, let's move on.
I forgot to mention in What Doesn't Work, they sort of abandoned the idea, as they said in the commentary track about halfway through. We don't know that Jada's character is Maureen and Omar's character is Steve, maybe I want to say somebody's name from one of the first movies. And so we don't know this fact until a few scenes later when, the cops are like got their red string board and they're trying to figure out and they're like, oh, well, this suspect's name is Maureen and this one's name was, and
who points it out? It's Gail. Thank you very much.
I know, but they kind of abandoned it after that scene and went, well, let's move on from this. But up until that point, you think it's going to be a thing. And I'm like, how would we know that? And then when I watched it yet again, Omar Epps calls her Maureen when they're buying their movie ticket at the beginning. One time. So if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't even know that little tidbit. So I'm kind of glad they abandoned that whole tying it back to the names thing.
Well, I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character Cece is actually short for Casey.
Well, I mean, they abandoned the chasing it down in that way part of the story, which is what they said in the commentary.
Yeah, well, it seems like the killer at a certain point abandoned the idea and decided to go after who they really wanted to go after. That's how I see it when I watch it. So it doesn't bother me. I don't care that plot point sort of disappears. It doesn't bother me at all.
So our favorite scene, I did learn this in the commentary as well. So Sydney has to crawl over the ghost face who's passed out in the front seat to get out of the car. And then Hallie follows her. And you think for sure Hallie's going to get it because the friend and, the black character always seems to die in these movies. She gets out and sort of gets away for a minute. So apparently that wasn't the case. Hallie wasn't supposed to climb out the window. Nev couldn't get the door open, was struggling. The door was sticking or her hand was wet or some such nonsense. And she couldn't get it. A couple of takes to let her out. And they went, you know what? Let's have her crawl out the front too. Screw it. So a happy happenstance. And it works so well.
Yes, because you're like, what are the odds that they both pull this off?
Right.
The odds are so much slimmer with the second person trying to climb out. The intensity of that scene and how suspenseful it is, it works so perfectly. It's another in a series of happy accidents that happen in these movies.
What's your favorite kill scene?
As sad as it is, it pains me to say it, it's Randy. Because it's so shocking. You're really not expecting it when you see it for the first time. Like you're thinking, okay, legacy characters maybe could and will be offed, but it's the whole broad daylight and he's in the middle of running around with Gail and Dewey trying to figure things out. You just don't really see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite thing about it is the way that when it's happening, you see it in the mirror in the van that he's in, like you're watching a movie of Randy's death within the movie, which is so appropriate for Randy's character. I love that so much. So much. I think the way that he is killed, the way that it's done, the way that it's shot, everything about it works so well. It's my favorite death in the movie.
Okay. Mine is the boyfriend, Derek, Jerry O'Connell, because you think back and forth, is it him? Is it not him? And you get to the finale. And even in the finale, when we are presented with the first of two killers, you're still not sure. The movie does such a good job that we're still not sure. So when he's getting tortured and you're like, wait a minute, it's not him. And then you find out it's not him and Mickey shoots him anyway. And I always jump. I'm startled every time. And that works for me because of the build up to it.
Fully agreed. The fact that you're on the fence until the very last second. And then it's like, well, he's one of the good guys. He'll be okay. Nope.
Gun to the chest.
Yeah. Nope. Done.
Yep. So who's your favorite character in this installment? Does Gail still carry the torch?
As heavy-handed as it seems, the whole Mrs. Loomis / Debbie Salt thing, it has to be her. And the only reason for me is Laurie Metcalf is such a surprise in the last section of the movie. Her performance is beyond perfect. It's a fucking masterclass in how to completely flip a character on its head. And she's so frightening and she's so intimidating and she's clearly off her rocker and you just don't expect that from her. She's absolutely brilliant as an actress and it makes me love her so much. But a close second is still Gail. I love how she's tougher. She's a little harder, but she still has that soft spot for Dewey and their relationship develops deeper. The streaks. How could you not love her and her streaks? I once again find myself spellbound by Courtney Cox's performance. She's such a complex character. I love Gail so much.
So I'm not a full lover of feminist genre and good for her horror and trauma and all that stuff. But that said, Sydney is my favorite character in this installment because of those reasons. Because we get to see her overcome and adapt and get stronger and grow as a person and deal with her ghosts, as it were, and come out the other side. I love her journey in this movie. It's very powerful, which you do not expect in a slasher film.
Yes, absolutely.
So that does it for me. And then, of course, my least favorite, we've got to move on. It is Mickey, the freaky Tarantino film student. Again, same reason. If he feels shoehorned in, I feel like he's underwritten, except when he needs to be there to say something quippy that sort of points the finger at him. Don't love it. Don't love his character.
Yeah, it's too obvious, and it's obviously underwritten, and we understand why. But yeah, I agree with you. He's almost as grating as the sorority sisters to me. So yeah, which is unfortunate because I adore Timothy Oliphant.
So is he your least favorite character as well, or who's yours?
Agreed. Yeah, he's my least favorite character because he's too obvious. He's just too obvious, and it takes a little bit of the wind out of the sails, which is why the whole Mrs. Loomis / Debbie Salt thing, even though it seems kind of ridiculous, it works for me because he's so obvious. To have someone right in front of you, and then of course it couldn't be obvious because of reasons. That dichotomy between the two of them, it kind of washes out. So I'm like, whatever.
I thought you were just gonna say because of reasons and leave it at that.
Because of reasons.
All right. So moving on to Scream 3, which came a couple of years later. We've got the year 2000, which is the start of about a 10-year run of not such good horror movies, this being one of the exceptions. It clocks in at an hour 54, written by Kevin Williamson, and he had a co-writer / script doctor to help him, Aaron Kruger, who worked on Transformer films, some of the Rings films, and then directed by Wes Craven.
Hello?
Hello. Do you like scary movies?
Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate.
What do you know about trilogies?
All I know about movie trilogies is that in the third one, all bets are off.
Hello, Sydney. Welcome to the final act.
There is one mystery more terrifying than you know.
Who is this?
Do you want to have this conversation with a polygraph? Is that a threat? It's a threat. You'll know it.
Was that a threat?
There is one secret that can never be revealed until the end.
Anyone, including the main character, can die. This means you, Sid.
From suspense master Wes Craven comes the final chapter in the terrifying trilogy. Scream 3.
Where does this one rank for you? I don't want to skip over that part. So 1 and 2 or 1 and 2, where does 3 fall for you?
3.
Okay.
It's a 3. It's a 3 for me.
Here. Okay.
My tagline for this one, over the top, but a fitting end to the first true trilogy of horror. I like this one as the period on the end of the sentence that was started with the first 2 movies. I like these 3 as a trilogy. And to me, it feels like 1, 2, 3. Everything else is something that came after. So in my mind, this will be 3rd on the list as far as my ranking.
Okay. It's a close trilogy for you. You're happy with it.
It's inferior to the first 2 films in many, many ways, but I feel it fits with the first 2. So it earns its spot at number 3.
Okay. So for me, it drops down to 5th out of 6, 5 out of 6. This is near the bottom. And I feel like I should be ranking it higher for your reasons. And also because over the last few years, it's been reappraised and people are appreciating it more. So I feel like the pressure to make it higher, but I'm not going to. It falls in at 5th for me. So the IMDb plot, for those that don't know, while Sydney and her friends visit the Hollywood set of Stab 3, the 3rd film based on the Woodsboro murders, another Ghostface killer rises to terrorize them. Now, I'm going to quibble with this one. 1 and 2 were fine. I don't think whoever wrote this did that accurately in the sense that Sydney and her friends aren't just out and about on a holiday in Hollywood visiting the set of Stab 3. That is not what's happening.
Right.
So, wah-wah to them. Again, big hits. And so they threw a budget of 40 mil at this one. Box office of 161. Jumping into the trivia and tidbits, I find the opening of this film, 1, blew our socks off. 2, carried the tradition. 3, shit the bed. Because you get, I will say though, Cotton Weary's talk show that he's made for himself called 100% Cotton. That is genius. But where we get Cotton being funny, clever, turned his, whatever happened to him into something that he can sustain, a good life with. And we're seeing him and his girlfriend, who we don't know or give two shits about. And they're the opening scene, the opening kills in this movie. It completely does not work for me. Yeah, I can't defend it because I don't really care about Cotton that much in this franchise. And so when you kill him off, I'm like, this isn't a twist. This isn't a celebrity. I feel like I wanted them to do the same thing they did in the first two, honestly, I think is my problem.
Valid. I completely understand why you feel that way. I beg to differ, though. The reason it works so well for me is because by the time they got to this point, they were like, well, we can't do that again. Everybody expects some known face that is not a known character to show up in the opening of the movie and buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to turn that on its head and do something different because it's been done by us. So what hasn't been done, take a known character that when you see him, you think, okay, he started to become more involved and was very relevant at the end of Scream 2. So he's going to play a big part in this movie. Cool. To kill him, to me, is shocking in the same way killing a known actor that we don't know their character is shocking. So to think that he's going to be one of our main characters and to kill him has not been done in the series previously. So it's keeping that shock value, but changing the game so that the rules are not the rules anymore. And that's why I feel like it works.
Okay. Valid, very valid. And I'm sure that was their line of thinking, why they went with it. So trivia and tidbits. I feel like this film is very clearly a commentary, because of Milton, the Lance Henriksen character, a commentary on sleazy Hollywood and Weinstein in particular, which is funny because these are Weinstein-backed films. I really like that about this movie, that they kind of make a little bit of a commentary on that.
Yeah, I have a note that it's ironic and sad that Rose McGowan played such a big part in the first Scream film, and the parallel between what happened to Sydney's mother with the film producer versus Rose McGowan being one of the biggest voices at the beginning of the Me Too movement, and Harvey Weinstein was the person she spoke out against. Yep. It's so ironic and it's unsettling. I mean, yeah. What must the people who were in the know have been thinking when Weinstein was producing this movie? And that was a major plot point. Just right. Oh boy. Thank goodness for Rose McGowan and the many, many others that did speak out, and the way that things have changed since the time of this movie.
So I did think Scott Foley, who doesn't really look like Roman in the beginning of this movie in real life, with these big glasses on and the way he's carrying himself, he reminded me so much of the lead singer of the Bare Naked Ladies. So I couldn't take him seriously when he was on screen because I kept thinking, it's been 1 week.
Chickadee China, the Chinese chicken. You're just waiting for him to break out in song.
Yes. So one of the trivia things I found, which I thought was interesting, was Kevin Williamson at this point was 5 episodes deep on a new show, a little show called Dawson's Creek. And he had to split his attention, which is why he had a co-writer on the script for this. I feel like it shows. I feel like you can tell it's not 100% Williamson effort. For better or worse, some people are fine with it. I find it worse. I wish he would have been able to 100% whip up his script, not as somebody else's fingers in the pie as well.
Are you aware, as part of your trivia, that there was a major problem with script leaks on this film, way worse than there were with Scream 2, and that it suffered many different versions of a script, rewrites. That's another part of why they had to bring in another writer, was they had such a problem with that happening. And in the movie, they allude to it. And that was intentional.
Yeah.
The script for Stab, whatever it is that they're working on, keeps leaking and they keep having to change it. I think it's Jenny McCarthy's character that says, well, which freaking version of the script? We keep rewriting it. So this script suffered greatly for many reasons.
Yeah.
And the dialogue and the comedy and the heart of it, some of it's a lot weaker than it was in 1 and 2. I agree with you on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on my list of things that doesn't work. The script.
Well,
unfortunately.
Before we do that, let's go to what works, because I feel like I need to sing some praises first before we come down on this, because my what doesn't work is very long, and that is because this falls way down to number 5 on my list. So what works for you in this?
In my opinion, the keeping the tradition alive of the super strong opening sequence. The killer doing voices of people that we know. It's not just the usual voice of Ghostface. It's not 100% believable that he can do that, but it's a really scary and cool change that makes the movie more unpredictable. Cotton's death, I think, works really well. Seeing what Sydney's life has now been reduced to, that the trauma of 2 furthered her PTSD in such a way that she's locked away in her house helping other people deal with their trauma, like that works. I think the sympathy for her grows deeper. The immersion into the world of the making of Stab 3 Return to Woodsboro. I love that we're going even deeper than the second one did into the meta of it all. I love that we're now inside the making of the Stab movies. I like that that's part of this movie. Seeing the set for the movie is such a trip, how it's all bringing you back to the original movie, and how weird and wrong it seems to be making a movie about this real tragedy and you're watching a movie about them making a movie. Like it's meta. I fucking love it. Unpopular opinion. Yeah. I'm here for this movie. That's on the whole. A lot of fans aren't. I am. I like that you get to the heart of the matter that was alluded to in part 2, which is that Sydney's mother is the reason for all of this. So I feel like we went deeper in 2 and now we're going all the way down to the bottom. I like right. That. I feel like the whole how haunted Sydney is, and literally haunted by the ghost of her mother. Visually, it works in this movie. I love that. There's a lot of it works, it doesn't work. It works, it doesn't work for me. And it's like literally boom, 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 one thing right after the other. It works, it doesn't. So I'm on the fence with what works and what doesn't.
So what works for me, one of them, Parker Posey's performance as Gail Weathers, and her bodyguard, Patrick Warburton, who's only in like 2 scenes. And their one little 2-second thing, which had to be ad-libbed, is when she's feeling anxious and she jumps in his arms. And then they cut away. And I'm like, where's the rest of this interaction between them? Because it's fucking hysterical.
Completely ad-libbed. Like I've watched the director commentary so many times.
Okay.
When we get to the whole favorite character part, that's what I will sing her praises. But for sure, that moment and her telling Gail, my lawyer loved that, you know.
I liked that when she punches her.
Just there are so many things that Parker Posey just does and says that clearly aren't in the script. It brings you back to how brilliant Matthew Lillard's performance as Stu is. She's every bit as brilliant as the actress portraying Gail, and their chemistry. Courtney Cox and Parker Posey together, the way they play off each other, is so fun and so enjoyable. It's one of the biggest things that works in this movie, I feel, is the 2 of them. That's genius, a stroke of genius to have the real Gail and the fake Gail working together. I love it.
So what you said already about this film and what works for you, I just put in a nutshell in a single line. They continued meta, but on steroids.
Yep.
That's what works for me about this movie. Is they just went so crazy, so deep, so much further with the whole shtick, the comedy in this movie, Carrie Fisher's cameo, Jay and Silent Bob's cameos, all the comedy beats in this movie work for me.
I completely agree. Another thing that works for me is Patrick Dempsey. He's not my favorite character, but I have to give him mad praise because the character is cool. And to bring in an actor like him to play it works. He has a surprising, incredible chemistry with Neve Campbell. Yes. The 2 of them together, it's magic to see them together. I hope that's maybe what's to come in the future of the franchise. We'll wait and see, but I love him. I think his character and what a red herring he turns out to be, and his performance, it works. The way you're wondering, like, is he just super haunted the way that Sydney is, or is there something more sinister? Like, you believe it.
What show was he on where he was McDreamy or something?
Grey's Anatomy.
Okay, I never watched Grey's Anatomy. Okay, so he was McDreamy in this for sure. Oh, I didn't care if he was going to turn out to be the killer. I was like, stab me, baby. Yes, Detective Mark. Oh my God. He worked for me. So, okay. And the last thing I have under what works, I loved the silly Scooby Mansion at the end with all the trap doors and hidden hallways. I absolutely loved that.
Bit of trivia. Do you recognize that house?
No.
Halloween H2O?
Shut up.
Go back and watch it. You'll go, oh, yeah, that's totally the same hallway.
Oh my God. That's amazing. But yeah, all the fucking in and outs of the little trapdoors and shit, I was cracking up. It was really fun.
I feel that the secret child of Maureen / Sydney's unknown brother, a lot of people are divided on this, but I feel it works. It totally works. And to go back, like Randy says, to go back to the beginning and flip what you thought you knew on its head, which is what the end of a trilogy is supposed to do. I feel like it doesn't seem forced or contrived. It works. Something had to trigger Billy, and now we know what it was. And to me, it makes sense. So I feel like that works. And the biggest thing that works in this movie for me is the ending. The ending of this film is such a beautiful way to end this trilogy. Sydney swinging the gate open and the triumphant version of her theme music playing. Her not having to close and lock the door anymore, not caring that it's open because she's not afraid anymore. She conquered her trauma. The way that this movie ends and the Dewey and Gale of it all when he proposes to her is so sweet and that's her real wedding ring, yada, yada. I love the way this movie ends. It just feels so fitting for the trilogy.
Okay. So that segues into what doesn't work. I don't like Roman's story. I don't like that it takes all the wind out of the sails of the arguments that Billy and Stu put forth in Scream. Because if you remember, Billy says to her, when he's got the knife to her throat, I believe, what's more frightening than a killer without a motive? Why does there have to be a motive? They end up having a motive, but he does slip that in. And then they say, but movies don't make psychos, they make psychos. That whole spiel.
Right. Yeah, we'll get to that because I have something to say about that line in particular. It's my favorite line of the entire franchise.
But that's what I think Roman did. He took the wind out of the sails of that first film.
You have to remember, Billy says that to Sydney. You know, there is no motive. What's scarier than a killer with no motive? And then he surprises her and Stu by saying, actually your mother was fucking my father. That, on a rewatch, directly connects to the idea that how did Billy find out about that? Because Roman told him. It all adds up. And you know me, I love it when on a rewatch, everything you've just said still adds up and still holds up. And it does, in my opinion.
So yes, they connected the dots, like you said, to make it work. I don't like it. I don't think it's sufficient enough. I don't like that it ruins it for me. The Billy thing for me doesn't work for me. Also, what doesn't work for me, Courtney Cox's bangs. And she's aware that they were a problem, so I feel okay saying that. I don't like that they included Maureen. I don't like the whole backstory that your mother was in Hollywood. Surprise! Your mother was a whore. Surprise! I don't like any of that. I don't like the trilogy twist here. I wish they would have gone a completely different route.
First of all,
that's what they try to allude.
They're not saying your mother was a whore. They're saying
she slept around.
They were saying that before this movie. We now understand if she was promiscuous, as we found out she was in 1 and 2. We now understand the reasons why. This girl was gang raped and traumatized at a very young age. She was victimized by these predators. So now she was not a whore. She was a woman who was traumatized. That, to me, is poetic. I like that they take the time to explain. She was not just some unhappy wife sleeping around. There were reasons, deep, dark reasons, as there always are. I like that part. And
I feel like they've made light of it, though. I feel like they made light of saying she slept around, guys.
I feel like they explained it is what they did. Yeah. And it makes her sleeping with Billy's father, you're more forgiving of that fact. And so is Sydney, which is how it's supposed to work. But the whole Maureen being involved and Sydney literally being haunted by her is one of my favorite things about this movie. The sequences where she literally sees her mother, to me, are some of the scariest moments in the entire series. I love it. Her mom at the window when she's having that nightmare, that shit is terrifying in a way that these movies have not been. We haven't had actual ghost approaching a character in this movie. And the fact that we get it, it's fucking creepy. When she's in the set of her house and she goes into the bedroom and her mother, quote unquote, is lying there dead and rises up with the sheet over her. That shit is scary. I love it. So I love the involvement of Maureen because it gives you those moments, which I think are really cool.
Okay. Another thing that doesn't work for me, Roman has the I can mimic anybody's voice in the world, even somebody that doesn't exist anymore, voice box.
It's just me, Sid. Have you missed me, Sydney? Would you like to hold me one last time? What's the matter? What are you staring at? Don't you remember your mother? Who the hell are you?
The other half of you.
Like I said, it's not believable. the technology
Doesn't
was not
exist.
It's not believable.
No. So that
yeah.
took all the piss and vinegar out of it too. I was like, well, this is fucking stupid because he couldn't do that. It sucked me right out of it. I think this movie does not pace well like the other ones that had come before it. So I feel like the runtime is too long. I feel like this movie does lag in some parts. Did you notice though that there's a Creed poster in the Sydney's room on set? And then the end credit song for this is Creed. It make me laugh. That actually is not a thing that doesn't work. That works for me because I don't like Creed. So I thought it was funny.
For me, on the list of things that don't work is something that you said you liked. The Carrie Fisher cameo and the Jay and Silent Bob cameo feels gratuitous, and it takes me out of the movie a little bit. The fact that everybody's cool with going to a party at this producer that we now know was a Predator's mansion, kind of lame. Them splitting up, lame. The knife hitting Dewey in the forehead should be really stupid, but it's fucking comedy gold.
It's hysterical.
You laugh out loud when it happens. It shouldn't work, but it does. But another thing that is lame, the killer not killing Dewey and Gale when he has the chance because he's going to use them as bait. Stupid, not believable at all. No, I don't think so. And then the setup of the videos of Maureen with the bloody sheet and the voice, in the finale of it, lame. Like, I get that he's a movie director, so maybe he's that dramatic, but no, it's stupid. And one of the biggest things that doesn't work for me is the whole Jenny McCarthy of it all.
Okay, so I did like when she's looking at her script and there's something about a candy apple and she's complaining, why am I in the shower or something? Oh, it was fucking funny, that part.
Sure, they use her character to dig even more into how meta it all is, but I feel like as an actress, she kind of takes you out of things, and her whole death sequence, it's not fun to watch. It's not how it's shot, it's her performance, unfortunately. And I'm sure she's a lovely gal, but an actress on the par of these other actresses, she is not, unfortunately. So that kind of takes me out of the movie a bit.
So the last thing I have for what doesn't work for me is we had to get a rundown of how trilogies work. So we're able to do that because Randy's sister shows up and happens to have a videotape of Randy running down the rules of a trilogy.
Told you I'd make a movie someday. Huh?
Oh my god.
Well, if you're watching this tape, it means, as I feared, I did not survive these killings here at Windsor College. And that giving up my virginity to Karen Kolchak at the video store was probably not a good idea.
Karen Kolchak?
Yes, Karen Kolchak.
Creepy Karen?
Shut up. She's a sweet person, okay? We were working late, we were putting away some videos in the porno section, and, shit happens.
Open the door, Randy!
15 minutes.
My room too!
Paul, 15 minutes, I'm leaving my legacy. 15 minutes, Paul! Damn! Anyway, the reason I'm here is to help you so that my death will not be in vain. That my life's work will help save some other poor soul from getting mutilated. If this killer does come back, and he's for real, there are a few things that you gotta remember. Is this simply another sequel? Well, if it is, same rules apply. But here's the critical thing. If you find yourself dealing with an unexpected backstory and a preponderance of exposition, then the sequel rules do not apply. Because you are not dealing with a sequel. You are dealing with the concluding chapter of a trilogy. That's right. It's a rarity in the horror field, but it does exist. And it is a force to be reckoned with, because true trilogies are all about going back to the beginning and discovering something that wasn't true from the get-go. Godfather, Jedi, all revealed something that we thought was true that wasn't true. So if it is a trilogy you are dealing with, here are some super trilogy rules. 1, you got a killer who's going to be superhuman. Stabbing him won't work. Shooting him won't work. Basically, in the third one, you got to cryogenically freeze his head, decapitate him, or blow him up. Number 2, anyone, including the main character, can die. This means you, Sid. I'm sorry. It's the final chapter. It could be fucking Reservoir Dogs by the time this thing is through. Number 3, the past will come back to bite you in the ass. Whatever you think you know about the past, forget it. The past is not at rest. Any sins you think were committed in the past are about to break out and destroy you. So in closing, let me say, good luck, Godspeed, and for some of you, I'll see you soon.
I'm lukewarm on it. I'm pretty much don't like it. I don't hate it. I don't know. I'm kind of torn.
It feels too convenient.
Yeah.
Way too convenient. It is a little believable that someone like Randy, who is obsessed with, horror movies, and as we saw in his film class in Scream 2, he obviously thinks about such things. Would he have really taken the time to stop and film this video while all the killings were happening at college? I don't know that he would have. So it seems a little silly. But it's so nice to see Randy that I kind of like, well, whatever, I'll give it a pass. I love Jamie Kennedy, so whatever.
That's why I'm like torn on it, because he's my favorite. So I'm like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move on to favorite scene in this film. You must have one.
Please. You're gonna hate me. The scene where Sydney's dreaming and sees her mother walk up from the gate up to the window. And then when she's in the house and she's like hearing Billy's voice and remembering things that happened in the first movie, when she's in the set, and how ominous it is for her to see her house, to see Stu's house, like all of that. I love that, because it's like, you know what? The things that started building in Scream 2, you thought you faced down your demons, you didn't. Now it's really time to face the demons, which is literally what she's doing by walking into that house. I love that. The chase scene when she runs into what should be her room, but there's nothing there. There's no floor. She almost fought, that whole sequence. I love it.
Okay.
It's my favorite scene in the movie. I love when she's back in her house on that set. I love it.
So I like the scene. My favorite scene is the one that follows. It's Sid and Mark at the police station after she's attacked. Their whole interaction, we get to see more of his office with the movie posters. Like he's got like a Vertigo poster or some Rear Window, something on the wall, and he's into horror. You're not sure if he's the killer. The way he's performing the scene, the interaction between the two of them, the tension, which is the trust. She's not sure if she's trusting and believing him, but she wants to, because he's a police officer and also hot. So it's a very complex scene. And I enjoyed that in this movie that I wasn't really getting a lot of complexity from.
Agreed. The depth of the dialogue and the interactions and the character development isn't there in this movie the way it was in the first two. But I agree with you that there's a standout in the exception of these two characters, and those two actors together are beautiful to watch. They have incredible chemistry. They work the hell out of that dialogue, even though it's not as good as it could be. That's probably my second favorite scene in the movie, is the back and forth with the two of them, and the way it's shot is wonderful. Props to Wes Craven for, as always, being able to convey the emotions we as an audience should be feeling by his camera angles. I love it. I love it.
I do like too at the end of the film how Dewey and Gail and then Mark, and he's got his arm in a sling, and Sydney, they're having like a little afternoon movie date at her house. Like it's like, oh, they're gonna maybe be a thing. The movie ends that way. Yeah,
it ends feeling triumphant and hopeful. And sunshiny, and the music and yeah, it's I would have to say that one's probably a tie. The ending of the movie, the ending sequence ties with that scene with Sydney and Mark as my second favorite scene in the movie. I love how it ends, which is why I can't help but put it at number 3 on my list, because it just feels like such a beautiful, fitting ending to Sydney's story. So if you're going to see it as a trilogy, it's a perfect way to end it, I think.
Now that's one thing I forgot. I skipped over. I had on my what didn't work list was I don't like at the very, very end that she leaves her actual back door to her house open, because do you know how many bugs are going to come in when you
okay. Like, just why
And
doesn't she
also,
have a screen door? What is wrong with this girl?
maybe Ghostface isn't going to come after her, but somebody else could. Shut your fucking door, bitch.
She's not thinking that yet. We haven't gotten there yet. Everything in 1 and 2 and 3 all tied together.
Yeah.
There was reasoning throughout that all went back to the origins of this story. And there's no reason to think someone else will be inspired to become Ghostface. We're not there yet. So I love that it just feels like Sydney wins. By leaving that door open, Sydney wins. And I like that.
So what's your favorite kill?
This might be surprising. As much as I love the gore, it's Roman. When Sydney kills Roman, how intimate it is, and how obvious it is that she has to do this, but it's painful for her. And then when he grabs her hand and she just sits there looking him right in the eye, holding his hand. Yep, I'm killing you. It has to be done, but we're connected. There's something really powerful emotionally about those two actors, the way that they play that out.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how, again, triumphant for Sydney that moment feels. It's my favorite kill in the movie. It's not as fun as a lot of the others, but I really love it.
It's right on par with at the end of H2O when Jamie Lee reaches out for a moment and looks Michael in the eye and touches his hand, but then she pulls back and just fucking chops his head off because it has to be done.
Yes,
Same
absolutely.
fucking vibe.
Yeah.
My favorite kill is Sarah Darling, Jenny McCarthy's character, because it gives me all the feels of when I got to see Paris Hilton die in the House of Wax remake. Because I don't like Jenny McCarthy. So I was like, yes, kill the bitch. That's my favorite.
I understand why.
I also felt this film, the kills were not as graphic or gratuitous as 1 and 2. I think it feel like it didn't lean in like in the first two, which was odd also to me.
Agreed.
I was reaching to think of a gory death that I liked.
Yeah, it's maybe that's why Roman's death is my favorite, because as far as like the shock and gore of it all, it's lacking. So to me, it's like, well, I'm going to pick a favorite kill for a very different reason.
So no shocker to anybody listening, my least favorite character is Roman. No fault of Scott Foley. He did a fine job being weird. But I hate the whole Roman thing. So he's my least favorite character. Who was yours?
The actress that is replacing the other actress who is replacing Tori Spelling, who plays Sydney. You've got the cast list, so help me out on her name. I can't even remember, but yeah, this girl who is playing Sydney in Stab 3 and won some, nationwide actress search to get she's annoying. She seems weird. The scene between her and Sydney in the bathroom where she's wearing the boots and she's been stealing stuff. Like I don't know. It's weird. Every scene she's involved in when they're back at Jennifer's house. That whole scene is so stupid to me, that the killer using a fax machine and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just dumb. And she's like over dramatic and overreacting and is annoying to me. I don't know. I don't like the character. I don't like the way she's being played. I don't like the way she's written. Don't like her.
So the character is Angelina Tyler, who won a contest to play Sydney Prescott, and the actress is Emily Mortimer. Okay, that's fair.
Not a big fan of the character.
I really wasn't either. I thought she was a lame red herring. I'm like, I know it's not her. Like, come on. Okay, so who is your favorite? Let's end this one on a high note. Who's your favorite?
Has to be Jennifer, aka Movie Gale Weathers.
Jennifer Jolie.
Because Gale is my favorite, how could I not say, okay, if I have to pick a favorite that isn't Gale, it's the actress who is playing Gale. Parker Posey, comedically, is the shining star of this movie. She's fucking brilliant. She's so funny, the way that she ad-libs, and there's so many things that she does that obviously aren't in the script, because the script was not as well written and she just took it and ran with it. The way that she interacts with Gale is comedy gold. The way that she interacts with her security guard, Patrick Warburton, it's amazing. Her and Dewey together are great. Like she just, to me, she's the absolute standout in this movie. She's so fun. She might even be my favorite character in the entire franchise.
She's my favorite in this 100% for the same reasons you said. I happen to love her performances in most things I see her in, from weird roles like the Blade movies to all of her comedy stuff with Christopher Guest. I just adore her as a comedic actress. And so I feel like that helps. when I'm watching this because I know I already like her before she even opens her mouth.
Yep. Yeah. Gail overall, my favorite character, but I would have to almost say it's a tie because to me, even though she's only in the one movie, I still remember her so fondly, so well. She stands out amongst all the other actors in every other movie, right up there with how standout Matthew Lillard is. Like she's fantastic.
Yeah, isn't it funny how some of these actors in the series can be in literally one installment, but they're like a franchise favorite or a franchise memorable?
Yeah, so memorable. Yeah, she's absolutely fantastic.
And then I didn't have really a favorite line for this movie, but you already touched on it. My favorite part is Dewey's little weird proposal at the end. Like he's just kind of like, "Will ya?" So cute, and he pulls the ring out.
Yeah, it's wonderful. My favorite line has to be the ad-libbed line by Parker Posey where she says, "My lawyer liked that." I goddamn like that, and she just, she had to just make that up. Like it's so funny. The look on her face. Oh my God, I love it so much.
Jennifer, wait a minute. Who gave you a place to stay? Who are you supposed to be protecting? Jennifer. Hey!
My lawyer liked that. Not as much as I did.
All right, listeners, that is going to wrap up part 1 of our Scream franchise ranking episode. Please come back next week when we drop part 2, talk about the second half of the series, and touch on what's to come. At the time of this recording, if you just type in Scream, any of the Screams into Google, I believe they were all in Amazon, although some of them were pay streaming, they weren't free. Nikki Flixx and I didn't have that problem because we own these movies in our personal library, our physical media collections. But get out there, watch some Scream, and then come back and join us for the rest of the rankings as we wrap up this really fun episode. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, goodbye.
Roman Bridger, director.
Hey, brother. She slammed the door in my face, and she said I was Rena's child and Rena was dead. And it struck me. So I watched her. I made a little home movie, a little family film. It seems Maureen, Mom, she really got around. I mean, cotton was one thing. Everybody knew about that. But Billy's father, that was the key. Your boyfriend didn't like seeing his daddy in my film too much. He didn't like it at all. Once I supplied the motivation, all the kid needed was a few pointers. Have a partner to sell out in case you get caught, find someone to frame. It was like he was making a movie.
This is all because of you.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Got your head to the side and said I'm angry. 5 days since you laughed at me, saying get back together, come back and see me.
Hey listeners, Movie Miss here, saying we know you have a lot of options when it comes to podcasts, so we want to thank you so much for listening to ours. Please make sure to find us on our socials and join us, be part of our bad movie conversations. We want to chat with you. We're on Facebook with an official page, as well as a Let's Talk Turkeys discussion group, where you can talk with other like-minded individuals who like bad movies. We're on Instagram at Let's Talk Turkeys. Our Twitter handle is at Gobble Podcast. That's GOBBLEPODCAST. And of course, you can always email us direct. We would love to get suggestions from you of movies you would like us to cover. If you want to be a guest on the show, we would love that. So directly, that's Let's Talk Turkeys, all one word, at yahoo.com.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.